Todd, that's exactly the advice you want to give to a writer. Put your fingers on the keyboard and do not remove them. And you are 90% of the way there.
No orphans or widows.
I really enjoyed the line, I don't know if I'm saying it exactly correct, but you stated that there's not a vaccine for fathers and daughters. And I thought that was really prevalent to the pandemic in general, just trying to lead into like things that actually matter during that time and making a connection to your family. So as a writer, as you're going through this process, is that something that you realize throughout the storytelling that mattered to you more?
It's an interesting question. You probably didn't hear it so well back there. It's a question about fathers and daughters, and there's a line in the book that says something like, there's no vaccine for the love between fathers and daughters. But love is not written in that line, but that's the implication, the fraught kind of, the difficult love. Or fathers and sons, or fathers and, mothers and daughters, it's just parents and kids. And I think sometimes my process, I think, when I look back on it as a writer, has been that I have an inciting incident in my head, or an inciting emotion. In this case, let's say it is parent-child, and then I hang a story on it. But at first I'm just trying to tell a story, but I don't know yet. I didn't know yet that it was about that, and in a way, I've written to find out what the real impulse to write it was. Yes, it was to tell a story that's entertaining, or whatever, that might surprise someone. But the cliche is like, you want to surprise yourself as a writer, or you won't surprise the reader. And I think that's part of what happened with this book, was I didn't know it was going to be about that.
Yeah, I thought that it was a really beautiful line, because it kind of felt like you just discovered it as you were writing.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it happens that way, for me anyway. And I think it is. I think the cliche is true, that if you are surprised yourself when you're writing, then you can surprise the reader. And I was saying, just come up with crazy shit that makes no sense. It's just surprising in a nonsensical way. But the surprise in this sense is that, oh, that's what's eating at this guy. That's what's driving the story. Okay, thanks.
Good evening, Mr. David Duchovny. My name is David. So I have two questions. My first question is, I haven't read the book yet, which I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Mr. Chris Carter, Mr. David Duchovny, my question is that, since you play Fox Mulder in the Xfiles, did it influence you writing this role as your role character? And my second question is, will there be another Xfiles?
Answer the first question.
The Xfiles does not influence me, my thinking or my storytelling, but Chris, the writer, and Chris, the creator of the Xfiles, and then the Xfiles themselves, have influenced me deeply as a writer, because when I came out of school, I was a graduate student, and the story's not important. There's no story. You're not talking about story. And then I started working as an actor, and then I started working with Chris on the Xfiles, and it was all story. The Xfiles are great stories, and at first I was like, story. And then, as the years went on, I really saw the glory in the story, and fell in love again with plot, and really it remade me as a writer. I think I would have been you know, kind of a pretentious, and pretentious, but I would have been a more pretentious, kind of post-structuralist, nothing happens in this book ever kind of writer. And then I was like, no, I like good yarn. I like to be scared. I like to wonder what's coming next. And that's all from this guy here.
The second part of it.
There will be another Xfile season 12.
So Jillian made a big announcement at the end of the last one that she wasn't coming back. And that influenced a lot of the end of the story. But I got a call last week.
I didn't hear about it.
Disney, who owns the franchise, is actually considering a reboot. And it would be with new characters.
It's okay.
As I say, I got a phone.
No room in the sandbox, people. Sandbox.
Anyway, so I just wanted to tell you that. And I wanted to see how it played for the room. And obviously, it was a winner.
Hi, David Duchovny.
It's funny when we say the whole names. But we don't know why. But we keep doing it, and it is always funny, but go ahead.
That's the way I'm used to addressing you. I said, hi, David Duchovny. Real quick, I just want to say I have a beautiful memory of watching House of D with my dad. It's a lovely movie, so thank you for that. It's a movie you wrote.
Got a lot of shit for that one.
So, what would David's algorithm suggest? Like maybe the last 3 books that really got you psyched.
I always go back to American Pastoral. I feel like it's the best novel of the last 50 years. Anything by Richard Powers, Overstory, Echo Maker, just a brilliant, brilliant writer. So I'd say Overstory, Echo Maker, American Pastoral. And then I go back to this book by Mary Ruffle. I don't know how to pronounce her name, I apologize, but it's called Madness, Rack, and Honey. And she's a lecturer of English literature. And it's not so much that book itself, it's not a novel, but it reminds me of all these great poems that I once read or have forgotten, and and this great mind that this professor talking about, that it makes me want to go back and read them again. It makes me want to be a reader again. So I recommend that book all the time, Madness, Rack, and Honey. Did I give you that book?
You did not? Good luck finding it. I'm going to go all the way to the back, since you've been choosing from the front. You, yes. You. No, him first.
Then you.
So my first question is, so David, in a recent article or recent interview with Vanity Fair, you said that you kind of started out with Mulder, and then you kind of swung in the other end of the spectrum with Hank Moody, and then you kind of swung back to Mulder with Aquarius. So do you think this book is kind of you swinging back to Hank Moody?
No, I'm just swinging.
And my other question was, if there ever was a Californication reboot, do you think your character would do in like this really politically correct world?
If there was another Californication, what?
How well do you think your character, like how well do you think your character in the show would function in like this really politically correct world?
Oh, yeah, well, that's the question, isn't it? It's hard to answer that one. And I would be a fool if I tried.
All right. Yeah, the young woman who stood up asking if it was you.
Sorry. My mom
your mom sent you?
She sent me with a list too, but I'm just gonna ask a couple.
I don't know if you're okay with this, but I'm not.
So, she's like a super fan or something. I forgot the question she wanted me to ask you. She wanted to ask what inspired the book first, and she also told me to ask you if anything like different happened in season 11, because she said she felt like the character's personality was different. I know this isn't about that, but she put it on her list. Sorry.
Season 11, Mulder's personality is different? Is that what you're saying?
That's basically what she said, but in a bunch of different colorful words.
Colorful words.
She's like a huge fan of you, though. She thinks
I think maybe, yeah. I don't know. I'd have to know what she meant. Season 11, Mulder different. I don't know. Was he?
Not from my perspective.
Yeah. I mean, in all honesty, and we've talked about this, or I've talked about it, the problem for me is, when I started playing Mulder, I was 32, I think, but he was younger than that. I think he was 28, maybe, I don't know, but he was a young man, and he had boyish enthusiasms and passions. And then by the time we came back to play him all those years later, he was a grown-ass man, as the kids say. And that kind of boyish enthusiasm, it couldn't play. Wouldn't be right. Wouldn't be senior. Would be unsenior. So I had to figure that out. Now, according to your mother, I didn't figure it out well. But certainly, it was something I was trying to figure out. And I don't think it had anything to do with the writing or writing it differently. It was really, what looks right on a guy this age as opposed to 20 years ago.
I think that's accurate. Okay. I'm going to choose you. You.
Hi. So I was wondering, out of all of the roles you've played and all the little pop-ins and things you've been in, which one of your roles is most like you, or that you reflect yourself in more? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, but it's like, why would I ever answer that?
Is it giving too much away?
Yeah.
Too many secrets?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can tell you, David's one of the funniest people that I know. So anything that has humor in it, I think is a reflection of who he is. So,
Well, this is something that we talked about when we were doing the Xfiles. Chris and I were always like, I was always pushing for more humor. And Chris was always the gatekeeper on that. And he liked it up to a point. But his point was always, we don't want to let the air out of the balloon. This is life and death here. And he's right.
yeah, I watched the pilot again recently, and I'll tell you why in a second. And
You didn't invite me over to watch the pilot.
there's plenty of humor in it, but there's actually something that we cut out that David was very funny, but I thought it was too much.
What was it?
You did a very funny thing where you did an old Jewish woman, and it was just too much. Although I think if it were season 11, we would have left it in. So that's how much the show changed.
Do it now.
I don't know what it is. You have the tape?
No, I can't remember exactly how it went, but I want to tell you why there was a viewing of the pilot. I hadn't seen it for a long time. Does everyone know, if you're an Xfiles fan, that there is now an Xfiles museum in Saratoga Springs, New York? I went back for the grand opening. It blew my mind. I gave them a bunch of stuff, but I couldn't believe how much stuff these guys have collected. Anyway, it was crazy. I think there were 500 people that came to the opening.
Oh, wow.
So what blows my mind is 30 years later, that there's